We already know that in Blender, we can stack textures on top of another. What we haven't discussed is, in Blender, we can actually stack different type of textures together. We can stack an image texture on top of a procedural texture, and vice versa. Basically, all textures, whether be procedural or image texture, can be stacked in this texture list panel. I believe you already know how to do this, but let me just show you just to make sure. For example, we want to add another layer of procedural texture on top of this brick image texture. Click on this slot, create a new texture, change the texture type to, let's say, clouds in here. Because we are now using procedural texture, we need to change the 3D view display mode to rendered so we can see it in the 3D view. Now we get these semi-transparent purple clouds on top of the brick texture. Let's change the basis to cell noise and then change this size to 0.05. Next, we can change the color down here to black. As we can see, we have this stylized texture on our cube object as the result of mixing the brick image texture and a cloud procedural texture on top of it. If, for example, we want to hide or show certain texture from our texture stack, we can click this check symbol in here. We can show or hide the brick image texture or the cloud's procedural texture. When stacking textures, we can control how Blender makes the colors between these stacking textures using an option called blending mode. If we scroll down until we see the color section, we can see a pull-down list called blend, and the default is set to mix. Now, to see how these blending modes in action, we need more complex image than these cloud procedural textures. So let's go up and change the texture type to an image texture by choosing image or movie in here. Then let's open our second sample image texture, which is the roof tile image. Because we don't have any procedural texture, we can now safely use the material display mode in the 3D view. Okay, let's scroll back down until we see the blend pull-down list again. This mix mode in here simply means that the image in this texture will block the image texture below it. Remember, in Blender, the stacking order is reversed. So, this roof tile texture is actually on top of this brick texture. Therefore, we only see the roof tile texture in the 3D view. If you used Photoshop before, mixed blending mode is actually the same as normal blending mode. Okay, now beside mixed blending mode, there are two other blending modes commonly used in computer graphics, and that will be multiply and screen. Multiply will not block the image below it, but instead blend the colors to make them darker. As the result, we can still see the brick texture, but darker. Multiply blending mode will make the dark color in that current image become opaque, and bright color become transparent. We can see the light grayish colors in the roof tile are almost invisible. Okay, now screen is the reverse version of multiply. It blends the color by making them brighter. In screen mode, the darker the pixels, the more transparent it becomes, and vice versa, the whiter the color, the more opaque they will become. There are other blending modes you can find in here, but mostly they fall into either multiply family, which make things darker, or screen family, which make things brighter. For example, subtract in here is like multiply, it makes things darker. And add is like screen, it makes things brighter. Lighten is like screen, and darken is like multiply. Of course, there are subtle differences between them. I recommend you to try and experiment switching between these blending modes yourself. Again, in my workflow, I mostly use three main blending modes, which are mix, multiply, and screen.